Let's convert this hand sketch into a CAD drawing. I have a photograph of the hand sketch. It's been sent to me via email. I started a default drawing, went to format and picked up the image, the copy of the hand sketch, added it and then inserted it. I was careful inserting, not to scale on insertion, but just left it as is. And what we're interested now in doing is adjusting the scaling factor of the hand sketch. So I use the distance tool. I put polar tracking on, and I scaled, and now I can measure across and I get very close to a meter. A meter being we work in millimeters, so we wanted that distance to read 1000 millimeters, and it does. So now the current drawing properties are set in this properties box. What I'm going to do is set my drawing color to red, and I can just start. Because polar is on, when I start start the line command, and we start it here, we can just move up to that point, and I can zoom in with the mouse. Because polar is on, notice how the line locks into the complete vertical, and then I come across here to that point, and the same happens there, and I'll exit. So those lines, if I select that line, it has an angle of 0, and if I pick this one, it has an angle of precisely 90. So that represents the wall of this small 4 meter diameter fire pit that's going to go in this area. We can easily offset that line to get these inner lines, but I think what I'll do is put the circle down first. So draw a circle. Because our drawing color was red, it shows as red, so I pick, guesstimating the center point, and click. The circle now goes in. We want a 4 meter diameter, so I select it, and notice the diameter is 4038. So we got close but not precise. We want to be precise. Once we move to CAD, your measurements are true size that you would get when on site. So we have this line and this line here represent the side boundaries, if you like, of the site. We can actually join those, so I select them, right click and join them. Now we can offset those by a meter. So modify and offset, pick the line, right click to enter a distance. So we type 1000 and indicate a site, and that site there. And what we now want to do is use the circle as a cutting edge to cut that out. Again, if you're moving from hand drafting to CAD drafting, it's not dissimilar. You would get an eraser and rub out those extra lines, and you'd be looking here in the modify to maybe do a trim or some technique to remove those lines. So trim. The cutting edge, gCADPlus gives you the prompt. Select the cutting edge and then right click for the next step. So we want to slice through the horizontal line there and this vertical line. So the cutting edge is going to be the circle, and then we would hit the right click for the next step. So I right click on my mouse button, then pick the bit that's to disappear, and there we are. So we now have the garden bed area, the accurate diameter for the proposed fire pit, and now we need to start and everything's full size and accurate. The trim action didn't go quite to plan, cut off the section through there, but if I select here, notice there's a small line through there, so we just hit the delete key on the keyboard, and that failed because it was, you remember, it was joined, and we can just, easiest way to do it is to pick the trim command again, pick the cutting edge, and then remove the errant pit. We're then left with these two short segments, so we just delete those. The next step is the designer wants a series of pavers, relatively elaborate pavers, so we need to create a shape and then stamp it in the area. Shapes in gCADPlus are referred to as blocks, and we now need to create a shape that looks roughly like the paver. Well, while gCADPlus does have a library and there are all sorts of shapes in it, there's a whole series of plant shapes, of course, but if we went to details, and obviously not in doors or arrows, these are subdivided into some different shapes. If we came down to paving, logically, if we had any paving shapes, we've got various pavers and patterns and so on here. I'm sure we don't have a shape such as this one, so we might have to make one ourselves. If I zoom in here, let's use one of the tools in gCADPlus to draw that shape. I'm going to use the cloud tool, and I'm going to watch for a prompt, start point. I'm going to enter to close, but midpoint, end point, midpoint, end point, and so on, so I can work my way around here. And we're reminded that to hit the enter key to finish, but I goofed, so we repeat it. Now we're going to need to jump to the end of that little arc there, and midpoint and end to there. And now we have a shape. So we can, each one of these is different, so we need to select that whole shape. So I can go click and drag, and I've inadvertently selected the image, so I hold my shift key down, and now we'll join those. In order to make a shape that can be stamped into the drawing wherever we want, I think we'd be well advised to change the colour and change it from red to just the default by layer. And now right click and create a block, and we'll call it, doesn't have a particular name, we'll just call it paver 02 for the want of another word. We then pick the point and say OK. Now if we can select it and copy it, and all I then need to do is just move around and put them pretty much as our designer has done, and that's been drawn by hand, so I can just work my way through stamping these shapes into the design. Now if you want to get more of a hand-drawn effect, you can rotate by picking on the shape and just spinning it around. You could also pick it and scale it and click in the middle, come out to the outside and just change its size, and that gives a bit more of the impression of a hand-drawn example. Well, in no particular order of importance, let's see if we can find a symbol for an existing tree. So we'll go to the library, plants, and then standard, and notice that there are some symbols for existing one. So let's pop this symbol in and we'll insert it into the drawing. And in we come. You can notice it's very large, so we can just approximate its position. Notice as it comes in, it's actually transparent. And these blocks, just like the other one that we created, can be scaled to suit you. So imagine that the upper canopy extends some distance out, but we also have to find some other symbols to put underneath. And that's the same technique. Just go to Library, Plants. Just go to Library, Standard, and we look for something that approximates that. You can see now we can scale through these quite quickly. That one nearly does the job. So let's open it and insert it into the drawing. It'll come in at roughly 1 metre in diameter. So we'll pop it down, and that's about the right size. So we can highlight it and copy it. Mark a base point, and there's one there, and there, and come down here. So we're adding to the design. Just for the moment, don't concern yourself with the white border, although we will deal with it. That's dealt with by going to Layers, and it's on a layer called Plant Construction. So now it disappears. If we put the image that we've been working on its own layer, let's make a layer, and it's already made for us in the default. So if we can put it on a layer called Image, and then just temporarily turn it off. So we select it, move it away from layer 0, which is essentially the top layer, and there you can see our design taking place. Now I'm not familiar with how the designer wants to work in this area, but we do need to add some other notes. Let's turn it back on again so we can see what we need. Adding notes is really quite straightforward. Notice that capitals are used here. So what we can do is create a text style that will always use capitals no matter what your caps lock's doing. Well, to do that, we'll go Format, Text Styles, and we'll make a new one, and we'll click in where it says Style 1, we'll call it Mid-Coast. I might even say Mid-Coast Caps, and hit Enter. We need to pick up a font. There are lots of fonts available to you, but there is one called Uppercase. Uppercase and Upper 1, Uppercase 2, and we'll add that. So if we make text style uppercase, mid-coast caps, make it current, then we can add some text in. Now, note this line here is relatively long. To do that and handle that, I'd use Draw Multi-Line Text. First corner here, I want to put it in a space, something like that. Now, let's move away. And I'm not concerning myself now with my caps lock. Papers to be cemented in Lego fine gravel to fill between pavers. Probably some typos in there. So in it goes. Now, what didn't I do was set my text type. character height is, let's imagine we want that to print at, let's say, 3 millimeters high on the drawing sheet. We need to scale it up by, let's say, we'll illustrate and experiment a bit. We'll just call it 350 and hit enter. Can you see now there's the text height going in? It's a bit too big, we're not matching what our designer's been doing. So our height, we set at 350, I think 200 might be nearer to the mark. That's close-ish, but notice that I can come in here to a smaller space, I can stretch it out. You've got absolute control over text such as this. So we don't need, if we move up here and do some fine tuning to our height, we're not quite there. $250 looks pretty good. Now it'll be a matter of just adding the other text. Then we'll hide the sketch image and carry on with our design. Well, I've added some more symbols from the gCADPlus plant library, added some more text. If I don't have a symbol for passion fruit, existing passion fruit, but we can easily draw a circle. Got lots of opportunities for doing different circles, but center radius, let's zoom in and like so, and then just copy that. There's no need to make a block if you're just going to copy it a relatively small number of times. Now I think we're now ready to turn off that layer that holds the image. I've picked the image. Notice we put it on L-image. So if we come here, and as we did before, turn off the image layer, we now have our design. And we can begin cleaning things up and working on it a little more. First thing I would be inclined to do is remember we set red as the drawing colour so that you could see things that were happening there. We can now change all of those back to a colour by layer, and the design is taking shape. There are all sorts of tools in here that can help you in design work. You might want to pick the proposed fire pit diameter and set the line weight, and we wanted a heavy line there. Maybe it's edged in steel edging, so let's change its colour to a bronzy colour like so. And now there's your edging for the fire pit. So we're now ready, and this is the concept design, we're now ready to present that to the client. And for that, we change from this modelling space where everything is full size. We could check by going to this tool for linear dimension and just jump to the end point of that horizontal line we set up some time ago and just check. That's 1,000 units or a metre. So we've drawn a very accurate base plan here. We need to add a few extra lines to indicate timber edging here, there and everywhere. But I think there's enough to work with. And the next little movie we make will be presenting this design. Just to get a quick look at how it might look, you can go to View and Background Colour and turn it to white. And there we are.